All right, so Teflon pans, nonstick pans are super, super useful. The feeling of cracking some eggs into a pan and having them slide around like nobody's business, even with no fat or oil in the pan, is such a nice feeling. I love the security that you get with a nonstick pan, but I really don't like the disposable nature of them. I don't like throwing them out when they've been scratched up. I also don't like using them when they've been scratched up because I know that they're not that healthy and they just kind of freak me out. And also, they don't do the non-stick thing that they're supposed to do as soon as they get scratched up. I'd say that when you buy a nonstick pan, a Teflon pan, the decline happens really, really quickly. They start off amazing, and then after like 10 or 20 uses, they start to go downhill. I did own one for, I think, 10 years that stayed pretty nonstick for a long time, but even that eventually bit the dust, and it's just such a shame to throw out an entire frying pan. Like, it feels like it shouldn't be something that's disposable. It should be something that stays with you as you wind your way through your culinary journey. So I made a concerted effort last year to try and get the hang of carbon steel. Carbon steel pans, especially as opposed to cast iron pans, they have a lot of the qualities that I'm looking for in a pan that I'm going to cook things like eggs and omelets in. They have nice sloped sides, for example, which is really important for flipping, which cast iron doesn't have. And they're a little bit lighter than cast iron, so I feel like they're much easier to cook with. They feel a lot more approachable in my day-to-day. Like, you don't have to haul out this big, heavy cast iron that just lives on your stovetop forever. There's a level of agility that you get with a carbon steel pan. This particular pan is a Debouillet, which I really like. It's made in France. It's not meant to be put in the oven. I think mostly because the handle is coated with something. Although I have been told that it's fine if you just wrap foil around the handle, you can put it in the oven. You can buy I think it's Chef's Series or Professional Series or something, where you can put the whole thing in the oven. Carbon steel is a lot like cast iron in that it needs to be seasoned before you use it. And it really doesn't like water. If you wash your carbon steel pan after it's seasoned, you want to avoid soap because soap does tend to eat away at the seasoning. And you definitely want to make sure it stays in contact with water as briefly as possible. And as soon as you're done washing it, you just wipe it out completely dry. And even I like to put it back on the stovetop just to make sure it's really kind of cooking that last bit of moisture away. But this pan, I mean, in theory, should be the kind of pan that grows old with me and sticks with me on my journey of cooking. I wanted to talk about how I have been using my carbon steel pans. I have 3 of them now. This is my 3rd one. And this one hasn't been seasoned yet. So I'm going to walk through the process of seasoning it and talk about some of the struggles that I've had so far, because there are some struggles. It's a new thing to learn, which is often not easy. So let's get into it. Seasoning wise, I watched a lot of YouTube videos and I have seen this method over and over again where you take neutral oil like sunflower oil and cook some potato peels in the oil and keep on cooking them until the potato peels get super brown and crispy. I think that the reason for that is that it's not like the potato peels actually do anything to the process. It's that if the potato peels have been cooking at a heat high enough and long enough to make them brown and crispy, then that means that your pan has had enough access to that oil and the heat has been adequate to season the pan properly. So it's more of an indicator that it's probably done rather than actually adding to the process. I've also seen people do it with just oil. So might as well do it that way. Okay, so I decided to take the easy road with this one, or at least what I thought was the easy road, and just use the oil method. So I followed the instructions on the Debouillet YouTube video that I found. So it was basically just pour in a little thin coating of oil heat the pan to 3/4 of max heat, let it heat up for about 10 minutes. I would highly, highly recommend doing this outside if you have a portable burner or like a propane burner. This set off my fire alarm and it was very, very annoying. And my house smelled like oil for a while, so I should have done it outside, even with the fan on. Anyway, so heat it for about 10 minutes and then let it cool off. Dump out the oil. I just used this empty beer can and then wipe it out to get pretty much all of the oil out and make it like almost dry, and then heat it up again for another 2 minutes. And this seemed to work okay. Although the first egg that I tried in this pan, it did stick, but I think that's because I hadn't preheated it enough. So when I tried it again, I preheated the pan properly and then the egg didn't stick. Slid around pretty nicely. In terms of cooking with this pan, I have a large one where I really like to do burgers. I find that they give me a really nice crust on my burgers, and I also use it basically just like a wok because I don't own a wok currently. And I find that the big, I think it's 12 inches or so, the big pan is large enough to fit a ton of veggies and whatever else I'm stir frying. I have a really small one that has become my everyday egg pan. The main difference with using it is that you do have to use some fat or oil for sure. It's not something, it doesn't become like Teflon levels of nonstick. It becomes reasonably nonstick. So when I go to cook my eggs, I just splash in a little bit of some kind of cooking fat, usually a little, not much, like maybe a half teaspoon or a teaspoon of butter, or sometimes I'll even just do a dose of the avocado oil spray. And then eggs over easy, scrambled, however I need to do it, they always come out pretty well. This one still has a bit of grease in it from this morning, but I wouldn't say that the look of the pan has changed that much as the seasoning's been acquired. It's not like it has turned, that kind of like really dark brown. It's still silvery looking, which I was kind of expecting it to look more bronzed by this point. There is a little bit of kind of golden bronzing happening on the sides, but in terms of the kind of actual surface of the pan, it still looks like metal colored, which has surprised me a bit, but it seems to be fairly nonstick. It works well, and I really like it. And I really like the size of this one. I can't remember what the size is, but it's nice and small, and it's light, and I can do my eggs in it. This is also a debouillé. This is that big honkin' one I was talking about. This is the Matfer brand, which it was rated the best carbon steel by America's Test Kitchen. I usually really trust their reviews. And it's been pretty good. Although one thing I will say is that it has become a bit spinny. Like when I put it down on the cooking surface, it doesn't stay put. It kind of spins around. And I've watched a bunch of videos about this. Apparently, if you get it too hot, it can do that, which is really annoying. I don't know if maybe when I initially seasoned this, I did it in the oven. If I just like got carried away and it kind of warped a little bit. But what's weird is I took a ruler and I checked the underside, and it is still kind of a little bit concave. So I don't really understand why it's spinning around. It might just be because of my ceramic cooktop, which is a very slippery environment. But these debouillé ones so far, or this one and the other one, they grip just fine. They don't spin around when I cook with them. So I don't know if it's a brand thing or if it's a me thing or whatever. That's all I've really got to say about these carbon steel pans. I'm really enjoying the process of learning how to work with them and how to care for them. And I would recommend, if you're curious, to get one. They're not that expensive. I think this kind of middle-sized one was about $70 maybe Canadian. So that's like 50 or 55 or something US. And if you keep it dry, keep it seasoned. If you do keep it wet for too long and it gets rusty, you just have to strip off the whole seasoning and start over from scratch. And I think that's about it. That's the carbon steel update. I hope you found it helpful. If you want to see me make some really delicious smash burgers in this pan, I'll link my 15-minute dinners video for you to watch next, because those smash burgers had such a nice crust, and who doesn't love a 15-minute dinner? Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.